Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today we're venturing into some pretty dark history. We're looking at H. Holmes.
And his, infamous murder castle in Chicago, especially around the time of the 1893 World's Fair.
Right, the Columbian Exposition. It's a story that really grabs you.
It does, and we've got quite a few sources to help us unpack it. There's a Reddit thread discussing the diagram of the place, which is something
I
else.
saw that, yeah.
We also have the Wikipedia page for Holmes, Holmes's own book, Holmes's own story, his attempt to explain himself.
His version of events. Okay.
Okay. Plus, an article from History, and even, interestingly, customer reviews for the book The Devil in the White City, which really popularized this story again.
Okay, quite a mix. So our goal here is really to, cut through some of the myths, the sensational stuff, and try to pull out what we can actually say about Holmes in this building.
Exactly. Find the surprising bits, maybe, or the things that get overlooked.
And the setting is just fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Chicago, 1893, booming for the World's Fair, all this excitement and progress.
Millions of people pouring in. It was this huge spectacle, the symbol of modernity and American ambition.
A white city.
Precisely. But then, kind of lurking beneath that shiny surface, you have the story of Holmes and what he was supposedly building.
A totally different kind of construction.
Yeah, this really chilling contrast is probably why the story still has such a hold on us.
So let's start with the murder castle itself. That diagram we mentioned, the one on Reddit, it's wild.
It really is. It shows gas chambers, secret chutes, hidden passages, torture rooms, ovens.
It sounds completely made up. One Reddit user, Lawlerkeet, basically said that it feels too much like fiction.
And that's a really common reaction, I think, which is why it's good Wikipedia immediately pumps the brakes a bit.
How so?
Well, the entry warns that a lot of the accounts were heavily exaggerated, even fabricated. Think hyperbolic yellow journalism of the era.
Right. Sensational headlines to sell papers.
Exactly. And maybe some, let's say, less than perfect police work early on. So those huge victim counts, you sometimes hear 133, even 200.
We should be skeptical of this.
Very skeptical. The reality seems likely much lower, though still horrific.
Okay. And interestingly, the Reddit discussion itself sort of pushes back against the pure fantasy version. Someone called Swipecat mentions Wikipedia describing it more like a regular mixed-use building.
Yeah, like shops on the first floor, apartments on the second.
And then a hotel on the third floor that might not have even been properly finished or opened.
Right, which is a far cry from a purpose-built death factory. User Guardian 6139 on Reddit gave a more specific layout, too.
Oh, yeah.
They described a big pharmacy downstairs, the second floor being mostly residential, but also where the murder supposedly happened, and then Holmes's own office and rooms up on the third.
Okay, so still sinister elements potentially, but fitting within a more normal structure.
Exactly. Though they did mention that detail about a cemented safe with a peephole and a gas pipe connection on the third floor.
Okay. That's genuinely chilling. Even one detail like that is disturbing.
It absolutely is. But it's different from, a whole building designed for torture.
And then there's the point from Michelangelo on Reddit about how Holmes hired and fired contractors all the time.
Right, to deliberately obscure the layout. So maybe no one, except Holmes, ever really knew the full internal setup.
Which would absolutely fuel speculation later on if no one really knew what was inside.
Precisely. It leaves room for the imagination to run wild. And Colonel Roughhouse on Reddit remembered the place burning down shortly after Holmes was caught.
Is that right?
Wikipedia confirms it. There was a fire in August 1895 that damaged it, maybe arson, and then it was finally torn down completely in 1938.
Wow, so it's long gone.
Completely. And get this, both Wikipedia and a deleted Reddit user point out that the site is now occupied by a U.S. post office.
Seriously. From murder castle to sending mail. That's quite the transformation.
Talk about mundane replacing the macabre.
Okay, so let's shift from the building, the castle, to the man. H. Holmes. Or Herman Webster Mudgett. That was his real name.
Right. Wikipedia pegs him as this consummate con artist, first and foremost, who also happened to be a serial killer, active mainly between 1891 and 1894.
And the killing wasn't his only crime. Not by a long shot.
Oh, no. Wikipedia lists a whole range. Insurance fraud seems to have been a big one for him. Forgery, swindling, bigamy, marrying multiple women, even horse theft.
So, a career criminal, basically.
Yeah.
The murders were just part of a pattern of deception and exploitation.
It certainly looks that way.
But pinning down the number of murders? That seems incredibly difficult.
Extremely. Wikipedia notes he was convicted for murdering his associate, Benjamin Peitzel. That's the one solid conviction.
Okay. But he confessed to more.
Famously, yes, he confessed to 27 murders. But, and this is crucial, investigation showed some of the people he confessed to killing were actually still alive.
What? Seriously, so why confess to things he didn't do?
It's debated. Maybe notoriety, maybe confusion, maybe just more manipulation. It muddies the waters, though. He is believed to have killed 3 of Petitzel's children after killing their father, plus several mistresses and relatives.
But the solid proof is thin beyond Petitzel.
Well, Wikipedia lists about 9 specific suspected victims with names and circumstances beyond the Petitzels. People like Emily Van Tassel, maybe Julia Connor and her daughter Pearl, but even those are often listed as suspected. It's murky.
So that brings us to his own book, Holmes' Own Story.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was his attempt to explain himself?
Yeah, he wrote it while awaiting trial or execution, I believe. He explicitly frames it as an effort to clear his name, to refute the atrocious calumnies being spread about him. He calls it a simple and complete narrative.
Simple and complete, huh? What kind of picture does he paint of himself?
It's interesting. He talks about his childhood in New Hampshire, being scared of the local doctor. He even tells the story about classmates forcing him to confront a skeleton, which he claims, weirdly, sparked his interest in medicine.
That sounds convenient. Or maybe traumatic.
Hard to say. He also talks about early business failures, trying to sell calves and sheep. It's all presented quite ordinarily, almost trying to normalize himself before things went wrong.
A calculated performance, maybe?
Very possibly. He does detail some of his early scams in the book, though, particularly insurance fraud. He mentions needing no less than 3 bodies for one early scheme.
Wow, he admits that.
He frames it somewhat obliquely, but yeah, and talks about taking out a $20,000 life insurance policy on himself later. So the seeds of deception are definitely there in his own account.
And what about the people around him? Like Petitzel, the mistresses.
He discusses them, yeah. Petitzel is initially presented as just a business associate, maybe a partner in some schemes. He talks about Minnie Williams and her sister Nanny. Their disappearance was a key part of the case against him.
And he tries to explain that away.
He offers his version, yes. Same with Gertrude Connor, another woman linked to him whose death was suspicious. He tries to provide explanations or denials for these problematic deaths.
How convincing is it?
Reading it now, knowing what likely happened, not very. For instance, his account of Benjamin Petitzel's death, he claims he helped Petitzel fake his death for insurance, but then implies Petitzel might have accidentally killed himself with chloroform, or maybe Holmes assisted him out of pity. It's very self-serving.
Right. Distancing himself from direct responsibility.
Exactly. And his explanations for what happened to Nanny Williams and the Petitzel children are similarly convoluted and aimed at shifting blame. It's really quite something to read his version.
Especially when you contrast it with the actual end he met, that Reddit comment linking to Wikipedia about his execution.
Oh yeah, that detail is grim. User Lemeru pointed it out. Apparently the hanging was botched, his neck didn't snap.
Oh, God.
Wikipedia confirms this general account. He was hanged in 1896 in Philadelphia, convicted for Petitzel's murder. The Reddit detail adds that he reportedly twitched and strangled slowly for maybe 15 minutes.
A horrific end.
It really is. And even that wasn't quite the end of the story, was it?
What do you mean?
The exhumation in 2017, Wikipedia mentions it. There were rumors for years that maybe he'd faked his death, escaped execution.
Seriously, after all that.
Yeah. So they dug him up. Dental records confirmed it was him. End of speculation.
Wow. That really shows how this story just wouldn't die. Okay, so let's connect this back to the World's Fair more directly.
All right. The timing is key. Wikipedia emphasizes his main period of activity coincides perfectly with the lead-up and duration of the 1893 fair.
And Reddit user Jekiso, citing Devil in the White City, talks about the constant stream of visitors, a city packed with strangers.
Which leads to that chilling point from user Beardo on Reddit.
That the fair was the perfect hunting ground for him.
Exactly. All these people, often alone, maybe naive, away from home, looking for lodging. It's a disturbing thought that this grand event could provide cover.
That contrast again. Progress and darkness side by side.
It's powerful, and that brings us neatly to those book reviews for Eric Larson's The Devil in the White City.
Right, the Amazon reviews, what do they tell us?
Well, a very common theme is that the book isn't just about Holmes. It's very much about the creation of the World's Fair, the White City, too.
So it's a dual narrative.
Very much so. One reviewer, an Amazon customer, mentioned being surprised by how much focus was on the architecture and the fair's planning. Another, R. Clevin, said it's almost 2 books woven into one. Someone even joked it should be called The White City, featuring the devilish H.H. Holmes.
Huh. Okay, but people liked it.
Overwhelmingly positive reviews, it seems. They praised the writing, the incredible detail, the historical context. Readers like Gayak and Paul Dow found it super engaging.
And did they pick up on that contrast theme we keep mentioning?
Absolutely, that seems to be a major draw. The book's description mentions intertwining the wonder of the fair with Holmes's evil. Reviewers like Gayak and Bruce Lovett specifically highlight how well Larson captures the light and the darkness of Chicago at that moment.
So the book really leans into that juxtaposition.
It seems central to its success, and you can see the story's cultural footprint in other parts of the Reddit thread, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
User R and Zach had this moment of realization like, wait, American Horror Story. Hotel was based on this.
Ah, right. Evan Peters' character.
Exactly. A deleted user confirmed he was loosely based on Holmes. Someone else mentioned a Sherlock episode with a similar creepy building premise.
Interesting. Any other pop culture ties?
User Kaiju Kitty asked if the show Supernatural ever did an episode on it, and another deleted user mentioned there are even escape rooms themed around Holmes's hotel.
Wow. Okay, so this story clearly isn't going away anytime soon. It keeps getting retold and reimagined.
Definitely. So if we try to sort of wrap up our deep dive here, what are the big takeaways?
Well, it seems the murder castle itself probably wasn't the elaborate house of horrors the legend claims. More likely a modified mixed-use building with some sinister features, but its true extent obscured by Holmes himself.
Right. And Holmes himself, clearly a prolific con artist and a murderer, but the exact number of victims is likely much lower than the wildest claims, inflated by that yellow journalism of the era. He was convicted for one murder, strongly suspected of several more, especially the Petetzel family.
And the setting is just inseparable from the story, isn't it? The 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. This incredible moment of optimism and innovation provides this really dark, chilling backdrop for his crimes.
That contrast is everything. It really highlights the complexities and contradictions of that era, progress and ambition alongside darkness and deception.
It also really makes you think about separating fact from fiction in history, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially with stories this sensational.
Absolutely. The lines get blurred so easily. You have Holmes's own self-serving narrative, the media frenzy at the time, and then later interpretations like Devil in the White City shaping how we see it. It's a real challenge to find the ground truth.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with is this. How does our collective fascination with these really dark, sensational stories sometimes, overshadow the more complex, maybe more mundane realities of history?
That's a great point. And how important is it to really dig into the context, question the sources, and resist the pull of just the most shocking version of events?
Something to chew on. It's crucial to remember the real people involved, too, beyond the myth.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fascinating, if unsettling.
It really has. Thanks for diving deep with us on this one.